We are pausing on our plans to move forward on a Senate vehicle to allow the House to move first with their proposal. And I am heartened that the bill Speaker Johnson is advancing omits the sort of devastating cuts that are non-starters for Democrats. The Speaker's proposal is far from perfect, but the most important thing is that it refrains from making steep cuts while avoiding a costly government shutdown.
And there was Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer yesterday saying that he's pleased with House Speaker Mike Johnson's plans to fund the government. The House will be voting on Johnson's plan later today. The proposal would fund part of the government until January 19th and the rest of the appropriations bills until February 2nd. The plan is facing some opposition from some Republicans. Georgia Congressman Andrew Clyde, writing on X that the bill continues to fund the Democrats' radical policies and bloated spending levels. Joining me right now is Georgia Congressman Andrew Clyde. He's a member of the House Appropriations Committee and a Navy combat veteran. Congressman, thanks very much for being here. And you're not the only one pushing back on this. A lot of your colleagues are also upset by this bill for not cutting spending enough. You've got Warren Davidson from Ohio saying, look, nobody campaigned on the status quo. So why are we doing the status quo, or even worse than the status quo?
You're exactly right, Maria. Good morning. This is a bad bill. It should not pass. It will not pass with solid Republican support. It's going to have to pass with Democrat support. And honestly, it needs to be fixed. There needs to be, at a minimum, the FRA levels and not the current Pelosi spending levels with the current Pelosi policy in it. That's not why Republicans were voted into the majority. We're not here for the status quo. We're here to change Washington and make us more fiscally responsible. And that's not what this bill is doing.
And you're talking about the spending levels from back in April, the fiscal responsibility bill that was pushed through Kevin McCarthy. These numbers are even higher than that. So how are you going to make the case that you're cutting spending?
We're not. There's no case to cut spending here. In fact, there's no pay for in it in any way, shape, or form for any of the supplementals like the Israel supplemental or the Disastrous supplemental from the last continuing resolution. So there are no conservative wins in this bill whatsoever. So this bill needs to go down.
So do you think we'll see a government shutdown then?
No, I think that's not what's going to happen. But when you take the threat of the government shutdown off the table, then you completely lose all your leverage here in Washington, and you're giving up, that opportunity to force the Senate to be more fiscally responsible.
Well, more than 200 House Democrats and 8 House Republicans are voting to block an effort to impeach Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Meanwhile, that final vote was 209 to 201. That's 12 Democrats and 12 Republicans did not vote. The 8 Republicans who voted to block the effort include Ken Buck, Darrell Issa, Tom McClintock, Patrick McHenry, John Duarte, Virginia Fox, Cliff Bentz, and Mike Turner, Congressman. We've seen enough of a dereliction of duty at the border to know that Alejandro Mayorkas is not keeping a secure border. Why the pushback in the impeaching of Mayorkas?
Well, I'll tell you that Mayorkas needs to be impeached. It's long overdue. We're seeing an invasion at our southern border, millions of illegals crossing our southern border, including high interest targets. Potential terrorists are coming across our southern border. This is absolutely unacceptable. Mayorkas is not following the law. He's breaching the law. He needs to be impeached. And so I voted to impeach him last night.
And yet, many of your colleagues didn't vote. Todd Pyro, I guess that's their way of not impeaching Mayorkas.
Well, Maria, I read something, and I want to get the congressman's perspective on this. I read the reason that those individuals decided not to go after impeaching Mayorkas is because the plan is to go after and impeach Joe Biden, meaning the train is pulled down the tracks on that, and Republicans didn't want to seem like they were being too impeaching, doing too many impeachments. Do you buy that line of thinking there, Congressman?
No, I don't buy that line of thinking. Each case is different. Yeah, you have to handle them individually, and Mayorkas definitely needs to be impeached. Well, so does Biden, but we can deal with Mayorkas first, easily.
Look, it's not the Republicans' fault that there's a fire to be put out everywhere you look. Okay, it's not your fault and the Congress's fault that from foreign policy to economic policy, this president has failed us, and the border is probably the biggest dereliction of duty out there. So
It
when
is the
are we going
greatest
to actually
dereliction
see
of
some
duty.
accountability, Congressman? Why can't you and your colleagues ever get something done?
Well, you know, if it were up to me, Maria, I would certainly get something done like that. There'd be no question whatsoever. You know, you have a dumpster fire on the border, and Mayorkas is directly responsible for it. So he needs to be impeached. I voted against the resolution last night to not impeach him, to send it back to committee, basically. Mayorkas has failed the American people and continues to fail the American people. Our border is not secure. That is one of the greatest vulnerabilities that America has.
Well, you've also got two wars that we're watching. Iranian proxy forces fired off 4 drone and rocket attacks on the U.S. forces in Syria in less than 24 hours. There's been 52 total attacks on U.S. forces in the Middle East since October 17th. The Pentagon says at least 56 U.S. service members have been injured. Congressman, you were deployed to Kuwait and Iraq. What is the level of threat for U.S. forces right now, and what kind of response should the U.S. be executing?
Well, I think that it's very important that the U.S. sends a very strong message to these Iranian-backed terrorists and to the folks that Iran supports, whether it's Hamas, Hezbollah, or the Houthis, that we will not accept that. But we have a weak president. We have someone in the White House that the world does not respect, and you have seen that time and time again. Weakness. It invites aggression, and you're seeing aggression from all over the Middle East. We need to forcefully, through the Senate, show that we support Israel, which means the Senate needs to pick up the Israel resolution that the House passed and needs to pass it and send it to the president.
All right, Congressman, we're going to be watching all of that. Thanks very much for your time this morning. Andrew Clyde is in D.C. Thank you, sir.